Sunil Ramkrishna. Basically, this is the 45th number part. Basically, this basically is the video. Basically, in this basically we are watching that basically how basically governments are basically failed in this conversation basically. So this basically you can say it's a conversation basically where government basically, if assume that basically government is watching this video basically, then governments will say यार मतलब सही में ऐसा कुछ है क्या, is just basically faking basically. But the people who are into hijacking basically, they basically know exactly basically what what actually Sunil or NAIR is supposed to tell basically. Why? Because they are doing the hijacking na basically. They are basically doing hijacking in the if conditions also basically. But you will not able to believe it basically that they do the hijacking of if condition also. But practically basically if you see, it's not possible here. Basically anybody can hijack the if condition. Normal group, even basically the big energy companies can't hijack this basically if condition. Can't basically able to hijack this if condition basically. Normal group basically can't do. Even basically the Russian group basically, anybody say that basically I Russian group in Russia तो ऐसा बोल रहा है कि हम तो hijack कर देंगे भाई. But do you think basically if condition they can hijack? Up to that level basically in Earth planet basically don't have any power basically. In Earth planet basically they don't have any power. They can basically hijack files. They can basically hijack database. Database is also very difficult basically, but they database also basically they can hijack. Why? Because permission is given by the satellite group basically. That's why they are hijacking. Otherwise they will not do the hijacking. So permission given to the certain level of Earth planet area, they basically do the hijacking. Otherwise basically they can't do the hijacking. It's not possible, yeah, because you have not given the permission basically. So you can just imagine basically. So see basically for loop basically. For loop for each loop basically. This everything basically we already saw in above example basically. These all are the alternative syntax basically of array for each loop. These all things basically are the examples basically, which that means one thing you have to do, but there are many ways. I want to reach to Mumbai, so what are the ways? From bus also you can go, from train also you can go, from taxi also you can go, from plane also you can go, from four-wheeler also you can go. So there are many ways, na, basically. That's why basically there are many ways basically given here. So you can basically go with the any of the ways basically, but ultimately you have to reach to your destiny basically. So best is the easiest way basically. So the easy syntax basically, because you have to achieve your task basically. That's all, nothing else. Then one of the person told that if I am using this if condition, if I am using that if condition, so one of the person basically literally asked the question basically. Just see basically up to what level basically the World Bank is not prepared basically. Just see basically. I will take one example. One person told that Sunil basically I always use for loop basically. I never use while loop basically. So one of the person told that for loop means that density, and while loop means that density. And one person told that for loop means this density, while loop means that density. So one of the person basically asked the question, when basically the bankers basically are doing the investment basically, as in that basically World Bank is doing, telling that basically we have prepared the products basically for the IT industry, and IT industry is basically doing the investment basically, but the banks group know that basically this particular developer basically has done the investment, sorry, is only using this for loop basically, he is not using that while loop basically, and by mistake basically they invested into that while loop. So what will happen basically? His investment will get waste basically. So here basically the World Bank also failed in this video basically, so that basically you can correct it basically. So one of the person told that up to this level basically the investment group do the analysis basically. No, basically even basically the World Bank basically might not be preparing the products basically of their, so they basically don't prepare the products for deeply level basically, because that person basically has done the investment and he basically is using for loop basically, and his investment basically will get fail basically, because in future basically if he will be searching for job basically he will not get the job. Why? Because he is using for loop and his entire software basically, his entire website basically, whatever programming he has done basically, it is into the for loop, and the investment basically is done in the while loop basically. So this will fail basically, and this type of thing basically has might have happened also basically, and this might not have tracked basically. So one of the person told that it's very dangerous. Yeah, basically the World Bank basically also have to think up to the level basically, so they have to create the product basically up to the level basically. So here basically their product creation basically failed basically, that is basically the World Bank basically. So one of the person told that World Bank basically never has thought up to this level investment basically. Why? Because they don't know for loop basically, they only know this 100 city, that's all basically, but they don't know the programmer basically who is then done the programming. He basically is doing the programming in for loop basically, he never used while loop. So his entire data basically is connecting to the for loop basically. So the World Bank basically is supposed to do the investment of that person into the for loop basically, not into the while loop, but the bank basically don't know this, and this is the fact basically, you have to accept it. So one of the person told that World Bank basically is supposed to prepare this type of products basically, but they might be preparing basically, I don't think basically they might be preparing basically. So one of the person told that the people basically who are into the investment side, the software basically who captures the data of each and every person basically, they basically never do this type of tracking. Why? Because it's very lengthy na basically, and people basically don't like complex stuff basically. Lots of people say yeah तू बहुत complex चला जाता है, but one person basically is not getting job, he basically some assume that basically he died due to some frustration basically, then that complex thing basically will create problem in your life, in your entire life basically, and he will say that basically यार थोड़ा complex चले जाना था, so he will say that basically yes यार basically complex basically चले जाना था थोड़ा, the product was supposed to prepare basically a little bit complex, so that basically that person basically who actually is into the for loop side basically, and the investor basically invested the money into while loop basically, investment which while loop investment. But one of the person to that bankers don't know yeah basically everything, because bankers don't know this also, that there is a for loop equal to 1000 cities, while loop equal to 1000 cities, if condition is equal to 1000 cities, user controls is created from 1000 cities. Bankers, even basically the RBI group, SBI group also don't know this basically. This type of thing only those group knows, that is basically the World Bank basically, and it might possible that who is controlling the World Bank basically, because whatever it's front basically in front of the world, that is not correct. So it might possible that the people who are handling the World Bank basically, they might be handling this investment basically. So in next video basically we are going to see a little bit more about the topic.